Did Jesus dehumanize a Syrophoenician woman by calling her a dog? In this video, you'll find out. Reminder, hit the subscribe button below and turn on the notification bell to stay up to date as new videos come out. And if you're interested in supporting this ministry, just go to justscripture.org and click on the support page. The story about Jesus healing a daughter of a Syrophoenician woman is found in both Matthew and Mark. The unnerving thing for people is when reading these accounts is that Jesus compares her to a dog. And the accounts can read like he was being cold and uncompassionate to her, pleading for her daughter's restoration. But the woman was relentless, saying, "True, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. So the story reads in a way like she had to keep begging Jesus, and eventually he changed his mind and healed her daughter. And not just the part about Jesus comparing her to a dog that rubs readers wrong, is that at the beginning of the story, she cries out for help by acknowledging Jesus as the Messianic Son of David, but he won't even give her the time of day and just ignores her pleading. Then his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she keeps on crying after us. But he answered and said, I have been sent unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So, in just 4 verses, you have Jesus ignoring her completely, saying in essence, I'm not here to help the pagans out, and compares her to a dog that's undeserving to be fed. And with these statements, commentators and pastors start scrambling on trying to find a way to justify Jesus' actions and words. But if you're dealing with the local village atheist, they'll probably frame it like, you really think it's okay for Jesus to dehumanize the woman by calling her a dog? Think I'm kidding? Just take this dig from a Christian author at Harvard entitled Jesus and the Syrophoenician Woman, a lesson on refugees and law school seal. It says, it's one of the most unsettling passages in the New Testament. This isn't the Jesus Christians like to think about. This is Jesus apparently insulting and dehumanizing a desperate woman seeking the health of her family. This is Jesus writing Gentiles off as second-tier citizens. The article continues to say things like, Jesus listens and he changes his mind. And the encounter shakes him. It changes him. It changes the way Jesus sees those who don't share his ethnicity. That's, basically calling Jesus a racist. And finally, the hero of this story is not Jesus, but the Syrophoenician woman. Now that article came from a college kid 4 years ago trying to embed it into the political debate over Syrian refugees. So, how about lately? Well, in the National Catholic Reporter, the author said, another possible interpretation is that this was in fact a teachable moment for the human Jesus that expanded his understanding of his mission. By the 4th Gospel, Jesus is fully aware of his divine identity. So according to this author, Jesus was not just rude to the woman, but also ignorant of his mission and didn't know that he was God incarnate. So you see, there's a need to clear up the confusion here, because the story is getting used and abused still today by both critics and Christians alike. So let's do what we do here and take a deep dive into the text and context and see what's really going on. Starting with the opening verses that describe Jesus and his disciples withdrawing themselves from the Galilee area. Mark lets us know that Jesus was looking to get a break from the public scene. He is still human after all, so feeling exhausted from all the attention, work, and friction with the Jewish leadership was normal for him, just like it would be for us, and probably a lot more so for his disciples, so he needed to give his boys a break too. But Mark adds that this effort wasn't vain, as everyone, including the Syrophoenician woman, knew that he had come to town. And why she is coming to Jesus for help is because his fame is everywhere in the Near East. And in chapter 3 of Mark, verses 7 through 12, say the following. But Jesus withdrew himself with his disciples to the sea, and a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea. The same type of withdrawing attempt to get away, but people still all over Galilee, Judea, and from Jerusalem, and from Idumea, and from beyond Jordan, and they about Tyre and Sidon, a great multitude, when they had heard what great things Jesus did, they came unto him. And Jesus spoke to his disciples that a small ship should wait on him because of the multitude, lest they should throng him. For he had healed many, insomuch that they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many had plagues. And unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him, and cried, saying, Thou art the Son of God. The noticeable thing here is that Jesus healed people from Tyre and Sidon with unclean spirits before. So, before the event with the Syrophoenician woman, is that you already have common ethnic people of hers being healed by Jesus, suffering from the same thing that her daughter was. And in between these stories, you have the centurion servant being healed as well. There is no question that the centurion is a Gentile, and his servant is very, very likely as well. And before this, Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount, which the Tyrians and Sidonians got to hear as well. So to accuse Jesus of being ethnocentric is complete garbage. So the idea that Jesus was a racist towards Gentiles is completely thrown out the window. And you can't accuse him of being a male chauvinist either prior to the Syrophoenician woman, because you have these 3 isolated examples of Jesus teaching and healing women in need. And they were also fed too at the feeding of the 5,000. But I know what you're still thinking here. But he compared her to a dog. How is that possibly justified? Well, it's the context of the situation, along with what Jesus specifically said, that will make it all clear to us as to what he was saying all along and why he initially remained silent with her. So let's start with his word choice of comparing her to a dog. Sometimes you will hear an explanation that it was fitting or okay because in that day dogs were not household pets and they were wild outside animals, and that's in large part how Jews saw the Gentiles. Now, that might sound like a possible good cultural relevant explanation, but that's simply not it. Because the Greek word kunarion that gets translated as dog is only found in the Syrophoenician woman episode, while the more often used word kuon is used 5 times throughout the New Testament in some well-known places like don't cast your pearls before swine, the rich man and Lazarus in Luke 16, Paul saying beware of dogs and evil works, Peter referencing Proverbs 26:11 about a dog returning to his own vomit, and finally the close of Revelation saying that dogs and all sorts of evil people will not be allowed into the kingdom. Here it is quite evident that these people that are being compared to a dog is done with a negative connotation. Peter's Old Testament reference provides us with the Hebrew word kalev as the one that is translated into dog in all 32 occurrences, and all of which are used in a negative manner, including Psalm 22:16 that says, For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me, they pierced my hands and my feet. Now I really hope that sounds familiar to you as the psalm opens up saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? The very words that Jesus cried out on the cross. But the one that I want to draw your attention to is Isaiah 56 that says, The Lord God which gathereth the outcasts of Israel saith, Yet I will gather others to him, besides those that are gathered unto him. All you beasts of the field, come devour, yes, all you beasts in the forest. His watchmen are blind, They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. Yes, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. Now the question. Who is God calling dogs in these verses? It's the Israelite priesthood. The people who were supposed to take care of God's chosen people spiritually, but they were acting dumb and wicked in their post. This proves that being referred to as a dog has nothing to do with one's race or ethnic background. Now, going back to our 32 occurrences that are used in all in a negative manner, is that the link between the Old Testament and the New Testament is the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek during the 3rd and 2nd century BC. Peter just was simply not translating on the fly here. Which begs the question, how were the rest of the Hebrew usages translated into Old Greek? Well, all were translated into kuon, and never once were they translated into kunarion, which should start telling you that Jesus' use of it has a different sense to it. Especially since out of the 5 occurrences of kuon in the New Testament, 3 of them came from Jesus himself, including one that came before the Syrophoenician woman episode with his Sermon on the Mount that included the same ethnic group of people hearing Jesus in that scene. So, the fact that Jesus is using a different word with her tells you that he is not putting her into the same camp as the wicked people that he was referring to elsewhere. Now, because we don't have any other usage of kunarion in the New Testament, is that we need to go outside the Bible to help ourselves out here. To which we turn to the most preferred lexicon today that is typically referred to as BDAG because of the 4 authors' last names. Its entry on kunarion says that it is referring to a house dog or lapdog in contrast to a wild street or wilderness dog. And this fits precisely into the setting that Jesus was in, as Mark said that they entered a house of which everyone in town knew where they were at. And in typical manner, Jesus used the very setting that he was in to illustrate his point, and with that working knowledge is that I think we have a really good reason to believe that there probably was a dog in the room as well, and maybe under the table too. So what was his point? His point was that the children, i.e. the Jews, have priority in his earthly mission, which is illustrated here with Jesus saying that the children are going to be served first at dinner time. It's not that the loyal house dog, i.e. the Gentile woman, was unloved and not going to be attended to. It's that she and the rest of the Gentiles come second in who was going to receive the bread, get offered God's mercy and grace from the Master himself. This concept can be seen in John 4 with the Samaritan woman, with Jesus telling her that salvation is from the Jews, which the Samaritan woman, who wasn't ethnically Jewish, recognized as well. Then Jesus revealed to her that he was the Messiah that she had been waiting for, to which the woman's testimony made many other Samaritans believe in Jesus as the Messiah too, and they requested Jesus to stick around for 2 more days, with many other local Samaritans coming to believe that Jesus was the Savior of the world. And this story comes before all of the other narratives of non-ethnic Jews having been cured and saved. And this prioritization concept, he also told his disciples that the gospel message would start to be spread beginning in Jerusalem and then would extend out to all Judea, to Samaria, and to all the Gentile nations, which is exactly the sequence that we see in the book of Acts. During which time, Paul wrote to the church in Rome that the gospel is always presented to the Jews first, then the Gentiles, but he clearly says that, "For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon Christ Jesus." And Jesus alluded to this as well in John 10, famously saying to the Jews that, "I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine." As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. You can see the distinction Jesus is making between two groups of sheep, where the first one is speaking of Gentile inclusion, and then also the second one would then be the Jews. So there will ultimately be one fold, like Paul said, in that there is no longer being Jew or Greek. And with this working principle of Jewish prioritization is that the Syrophoenician woman was not the least bit insulted by Jesus' aphorism, is that she answered and said unto him, "Correct, Lord." Note, this is the only time in Mark that Jesus is called Lord. So she is getting highlighted by Mark intentionally here because her faith in Jesus was so great and recognized that just receiving a tiny morsel of his grace, mercy, and power would cure her daughter even from a distance, which is another unique feature with this account in Mark as well. And after that demonstration of her unwavering faith in front of everyone, is that Jesus confirmed it by saying, "O woman, how great is your faith? Let it be done as you requested." And her daughter was made whole that very hour. So I hope by now that has resolved any doubt in your mind over Jesus' choice of words with her, which only leaves us with Jesus' silent treatment at the beginning. When you compare the two accounts, is that only Matthew has Jesus' silence being recorded and the disciples asking him to send her away. That tells us that Matthew is trying to highlight something here for us. It's never merely extra details to fill up the page. The three pieces to these two verses are Jesus' silence, the disciples' request to him, and Jesus' response to them. The disciples' request can easily be understood that they were getting annoyed with her because she wouldn't stop screaming out for help. To which Jesus replied to them that he was only sent by the Father to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That phrase should have jogged their memory of when he sent them out and said, "Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter you not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Now, even though they were restricted to only the Jews first in their first mission, is that it still makes sense because they were God's elect and were to be offered the kingdom first. But Jesus alluded that the disciples would eventually preach to the Gentiles just 12 verses down, saying, "And you shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles." So Jesus was planted into their minds that they will be witnesses to the Gentiles, and they should have anticipated this as well when Jesus praised the centurion's faith being greater than anyone else's in all of Israel, and that many will come from the east and the west to sit in the kingdom of heaven. This is referring to Gentiles, as Jesus continued saying, "But the children, sons or heirs, of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So Jesus flat out told the disciples that the kingdom is going to be filled with many Gentiles, while many from God's original chosen group will be cast out for their rejection of Jesus as the Messiah. And look how verse 13 finishes this episode. "And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way, as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in that selfsame hour." This mirrors the account of the Syrophoenician woman. And Matthew went on priming his readers for Gentile inclusion by saying Jesus was fulfilling Isaiah 42, 1-4, as God's servant that will judge the Gentiles, and in his name shall the Gentiles trust. And the idea that the disciples would go out and proselytize the Gentiles was a radical shift in their reality. Jews in that day, or really any time prior to that, didn't mind Gentiles coming into the nation and adopting their culture and religion. But going out and evangelizing them on their turf is not something that they did. And you can see their mental blockage with the Samaritan woman scene, as the disciples were confused and likely a little annoyed that Jesus was giving her the time of day. So what's the motif that's getting repeated here? Hey apostles, the Gentiles are coming in, so get over it. So why was Jesus initially silent with her? It was because he was checking how the disciples would respond to her. And in typical fashion, they failed miserably by getting all frustrated with her and asked Jesus to send her away. To which Jesus punted it right back at them in an attempt to get them to remember that helping and preaching the gospel unto the Gentiles is part of their job description. So Jesus' silence was not about ignoring the woman. It was in another teachable moment in the Gospels where Jesus was preparing his disciples for their mission to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth. And the final observation to be made is from the reader's perspective, because both Matthew and Mark have the story coming right after the scribes and Pharisees trying to accuse Jesus that he and his disciples were breaking the tradition of the elders with refusing to do hand washing before their meal. To which Jesus responded to all of them, saying, "It's not that which goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but that which comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man." The disciples were somehow confused by this and also nervous because the scribes and the Pharisees were offended. So Jesus called them out for their ongoing confusion over what actual righteousness is and looks like, in that it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles, but what comes out of it, as what comes out shows a person's true character. And these two back-to-back stories are contrasted against each other to highlight how the Pharisaic system fails in its endless system of rules, where all that God requires for justification is faith in him that does allow for Gentile inclusion, which is perfectly stated in the most famous verse in the New Testament. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Reminder, hit the subscribe button below, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment. And don't forget to visit us at justscripture.org. And in the meantime, stay salty.